All NFC West as the Seattle Seahawks host the LA Rams in the NFC Championship Game. Seahawks 2.5-point home favorites here. We will break down everything you need to know in this video. Can we now trust Sam Darnold? Zach Charbonnet out for the Seahawks. So is it a steady diet of Kenneth Walker? What should you bet for this game? Single game parlay for this game, and much, much more. Ninja here with SI.com's Iain MacMillan. Welcome to the channel. Hit that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. Let us know your favorite bet for this football game in the comments below. You betting Rams? You betting Seahawks? Let us know right now. iMac, if you have a Sam Darnold trust meter, scale is 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, where is your trust in Sam Darnold right now going into this football game?
My trust in Sam Darnold is at about I think the rating would be different depending on the factors. My trust rating in Sam Darnold going out and winning the game for me, about a 5. My trust in Sam Darnold not losing the game for me, about an 8, if that makes any sense. I think what Sam Darnold kind of needs is maybe not to the extent that we saw last week against the 49ers, but a similar type of game. If his defense plays really well, if his running game gets going, maybe a couple of big plays on special teams, he's going to be fine. He's not going to play bad enough where he's going to lose a game where all the other pieces are working. But if the defense has a bad game, or if the running game can't get going, or they can't get any explosive plays on special teams, if Sam Darnold has to go out there and put up 35 points with his arm for the Seahawks to win this game, that's when I don't trust Sam Darnold. So I would say depending on the situation, I guess I'll cut it down in the middle. I guess I'll say about a 7. I trust him.
And, you know, there is a world that exists where he does have to put up 30, 35 plus points like we saw in the last meeting between these two teams, which we will get into. But just talk to me about last week's performance, because his oblique is still a thing this week. It was a story going into the divisional round against San Fran. Drew Lock was taking snaps at practice. How did Darnold look to you in that game? And you hit the nail on the head. It's not like he needed to play out of his mind or anything, but still, any concerns there?
No, not really. Yeah, I guess he looked okay for his 17 pass attempts that he had last week. He completed 12 of them. But yeah, I don't think an oblique's going to cause too much of an issue for him. If he was a guy who got the majority of his offense through his legs, or at least a portion, if he's a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, then I'd be concerned. But not too big of an issue. Another week of rest, and I guess anything could happen. But it didn't seem like he strained it further this past weekend. So pretty minimal concern with his oblique.
So let's talk, other injuries here, because there is a biggie. Zach Charbonnet out. How big of a loss is that going to be? Charles Cross as well on that offensive line, questionable. So, what adjustments will Clint Kubiak and Seattle make, if any, here, iMac?
Yeah, I don't know if he makes any. The Charbonnet injury does not really concern me whatsoever. Kenneth Walker, actually, I think, has overall been the more effective running back throughout the season. And if you remember last year, not the regular season that just passed, but the year before, do you remember when obviously the Lions had 2 running backs, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs? David Montgomery got hurt late in the season. Jahmyr Gibbs got more carries, and he actually ended up being even more effective. Whereas people were all of a sudden concerned the Lions rushing attack wasn't going to be what it was. Maybe not to that extent, but I do kind of think it's going to be a similar situation. I mean, Kenneth Walker looked extremely good last week. He's been effective throughout the season, so wouldn't be concerned. I think the concern comes up where now you're kind of down to 1 really good running back. So if something happens to Kenneth Walker, and we've seen him get injured in the past, then that would be a big cause for concern for the Seahawks in this game, and then if they do advance to the Super Bowl. But right now, I don't think it's all that big. I don't think it's all that big of a deal. I don't think it's a huge issue to be concerned about.
So increased workload potentially here. Do you trust his props? So, for example, 87.5 rushing yards on the board here. Or is it maybe just a complete stay away? Because where I will push back on Charbonnet is now they miss the blocking that he provides. And maybe that void, that Cross may leave on that offensive line, depending on how the week plays out for his status.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I would say in terms of targeting some Kenneth Walker props, I think it actually is a great spot to do it, though. Because the Rams defense, and I'll mention this a little bit later when I give out my pick, but the Rams defense has quietly regressed kind of in the last 6-7 weeks, and I don't think enough people are talking about it, and a lot of teams have been able to run the football. against this Rams defense. The Bears last week averaged 4.1 yards per carry. Over the past 3 games, they've given up 4.2 yards per carry. So this Rams defense, which at one point this season was kind of like one of the scariest defenses in the NFL, not necessarily the case anymore. And I think not asking Sam Darnold to do too much is the correct strategy for the Seahawks. So hand the ball to Kenneth Walker. Obviously, if they find themselves down in the second half, they're going to have to turn to Sam Darnold, but they can get out to a lead, ride the run game, ride Kenneth Walker, and ride him all the way to the Super Bowl.
Let me just ask you this. The Rams, you talk about like the recent, struggles, for lack of a better term, but your thoughts on their 2 playoff games here so far, barely won each of them against the Panthers and against the Bears. Is there something you're noticing about this team, or has the league caught up to what the Rams had been doing?
I think in sports, and especially in football, a lot of winning comes with peaking at the right time. And I think the Rams peaked early in the season. Their defense has regressed, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. If you look back at some EPA numbers, like middle of the pack in opponent EPA since week 13. So not good. And also Matt Stafford hasn't quietly not played good. Now there's like some issues with, I think, the index finger on his throwing hand, which might be causing some issues. But if you look at Matt Stafford's numbers in the playoffs, not good, like 55% completion rating or something like that. And he's played against 2 not good defenses. Like the Bears, their whole defensive thing was that they forced turnovers. But when they couldn't force turnovers, they were like bottom 5 in opponent EPA. Matt Stafford couldn't really complete many passes against them. The Panthers defense certainly isn't anything to write home about. He didn't really have a great game against them either in terms of completion percentage. So I think Matt Stafford, whether it's just he hasn't played well or his finger is bothering him more than people are aware of, I think it's a mix of that, and their defense has regressed. And I think it just comes down to, I think they peaked a little bit too early in the season.
Speaking of peaking, the Seahawks defense may have hit its stride post the game in OT where they faced the Rams. So they've obviously met twice. They split those 2 matchups. The Darnold 4-pick game in week 11, which the Rams won, but then that offensive outburst in week 16, that Seattle one, Stafford throwing for 457, Puka with the 12 catches for 225. What do you take from those regular season meetings into this one? And one interesting thing is that after that OT game against the Rams, like I said, the Seahawks defense has basically been unflappable.
One big takeaway that I have from both those games is the third factor in NFL games, and that's special teams. Seahawks far superior on special teams, and it made the difference. If you remember that comeback win for the Seahawks the second time they met, that was sparked by a punt return touchdown. And if you look at special teams DVOA, Seahawks second in the NFL, Rams 26th. I actually think the Rams fired their special teams coordinator after that loss to the Seahawks. Well, their special teams hasn't necessarily looked that much better since then either. So this is going to be a very close game. Both teams, a lot of pros and cons to both sides. And in these close games, sometimes what can make the difference, like it did the last time they met, is special teams, as kind of weird as that is to say. So that's kind of my big takeaway from the first 2 meetings, is special teams has already and could continue to play a role when they play in a rubber match.
Yeah, totally true. And one of the things the Rams do have going for them, maybe, is the experience factor. So how much of a factor is that experience going to be in the spot? McVay, Stafford, the Rams, yada, yada, yada. They all have the experience here. Is that a real thing in the spot?
I think it definitely is, and I think that's the strongest argument to make for the Rams, is that they've been here before. This is a very experienced head coach, a very experienced quarterback, and they're going up against an inexperienced head coach. Remember, this is Mike Macdonald's first playoff appearance, and obviously not necessarily inexperienced. And inexperienced in the playoffs for Sam Darnold, and also a guy who, we all know this, has historically not shown up in big moments in the playoffs. And maybe thankfully for him, he didn't have to show up last week against the 49ers. So yeah, I think that absolutely could play a role, especially if things get close late, especially if there's some crunch time decisions that the 2 coaches need to make. But I will say this about Sean McVay. I actually thought he coached a terrible game against the Bears, which I thought was kind of interesting for a guy who does have that playoff experience, who's been there before, he's done it. It was very surprising. I actually felt he kind of got out-coached against the Bears. So he'll have to bounce back in this one. But yeah, that I think is the biggest, strongest argument for the Rams is the experience of both their head coach and quarterback.
Yeah, and McVay certainly agrees with your sentiment. He was not a fan of the performance that he put in on the sideline there, at least in terms of what he conveyed to the media in that post-game interview. We talk about Matty Stafford. We talk about Puka. Who could be an X factor for this Rams team in this one? Like Devontae didn't have a great game against Chicago. Kyren Williams could play a massive part here, or is there maybe someone else?
No, I think it is the Rams' run game, whether that's Kyren Williams or mixture him and Blake Corum. They have to, I think, be able to find a way to run the ball against the Seahawks defense, which is easier said than done for sure. The Seahawks run defense is the best in the NFL by almost every single metric. And it's because Matt Stafford has not played good the past couple of weeks. So I don't think they can beat a team as good as the Seahawks unless Matt Stafford all of a sudden, reverts back to his elite self, his MVP self. But if he plays like he did the past 2 weeks in the playoffs, they need the run game to get going. And I think leaning on that run game, if they can find success, is going to play a big role. So if the Rams don't get their run game going whatsoever, if the Seahawks find a way to completely shut their run game down, I find it hard to believe the Rams will be able to find a way to win this game.
Before we get to the picks, folks, if you want to become a smarter bettor, then you need to sign up at Prop Professor, because right now you can get it for 25% off for the first month. Get hundreds of plus EV bets every day and get a real shot at finding long-term profit. NFL, NBA, the NHL, plenty more leagues, all covered. And it's more than just highlighting plus EV spots. There's a great arbitrage tool, fantasy optimizer, and tons more under the hood. Easily the best bang for buck on the market. So use the promo code OddsSharkPP at checkout and get 25% off for that first month. I'm Mac. I'll get your game pick here. But first, if you could be so kind, cook us up a little single game parlay here, please.
3-leg parlay for Rams and Seahawks. We're going to target both running backs, or at least 2 running backs in this game. We're going to start with Kenneth Walker, 100 plus rushing yards. So we're going to take an alternate rushing yards total on Kenneth Walker. Rams run defense has not been good lately, 4.3 yards per carry they're giving up throughout the season. The Bears were able to run the ball against them this past week, and with Zach Charbonnet out, I think the Seahawks just lean on Kenneth Walker. And he's been very effective this season. So 100 plus rushing yards for Kenneth Walker. Then I'm going to go under 28.5 rushing yards for Blake Corum, the backup running back for the Rams. He's only played around 36% of snaps in their first 2 playoff games. He hasn't really been effective. So even, he might not even get that many carries, but even if he does, he has to face what is the best run defense in the NFL. The Seahawks lead in opponent rush EPA, opponent rush success rate, opponent yards per carry. So I think the Rams would be smart to just stick with their starter. And if they do have to go to Blake Corum, I don't think he's going to be efficient. So under 28.5 rushing yards for Blake Corum. And then we're going to top it off. Rashid Shaheed, touchdown for the Seahawks. Scored a touchdown against the Rams last time they played with a punt return touchdown. And he might not, contribute a ton on offense, but he still gets a few catches per game. He could be a deep threat for them. Could be a guy they target to get some speed against this Rams defense. So finish off the parlay with Rashid Shaheed. It doesn't matter. It can be a punt return touchdown. It can be a receiving touchdown. Heck, it could be a rushing touchdown. I don't care. Rashid Shaheed to find the end zone.
Love it. I think I know where you're headed for your game pick here, but let's break it on down. Seahawks, 2.5-point home faves here at DraftKings at the very least. Total 47.5 on the board. The under actually minus 115. The over minus 105. Moneyline prices Seattle minus 155. The Rams coming back at plus 130. What's your bet here, iMac?
Yeah, I think I've alluded to it throughout this video. I'm going to take the Seahawks. It's not one that I feel super confident in. I'm not running to the sports book to place this bet, but I think it does come down to a couple of key factors. One is teams have to peak at the right moment, and I think the Seahawks certainly defensively are peaking at the right moment. And the Rams aren't 3-3 in their last 6 games. They lost to the Panthers in that stretch. They lost to my poor Falcons in that stretch. And then even their 2 playoff wins, good teams win, great teams cover. They didn't cover either. Couldn't cover 10.5-point favorites against the Panthers. Couldn't cover 4.5 against the Bears, although, to be fair, they almost did. And then Caleb Williams had that crazy circus throw to tie the game up late. But still, I don't think they've looked good. I don't think they've actually looked good since they beat the Lions in week 13, 14, 15, was it? They have not been playing well. Their defense has completely fallen off a cliff. They're like middle of the pack in the NFL in opponent EPA. over the past, dating back to week 13. So, I don't think momentum is on the Rams side. And also, I mentioned earlier, special teams. Seahawks have a huge special teams advantage in this game. We saw how important it was the last time these two teams met. And in a game that, once again, has a close point spread, less than 3 points, I think special teams could once again play a significant role. So am I a little scared laying points on Sam Darnold, Mike McDonald in this spot? Absolutely. But I think there's enough factors there for me to believe in the Seahawks, believe in their defense. I think they get the win. I think they get the cover, and I think they advance to Super Bowl 60.